The Manipulated Man by Esther Vilar. Author's Introduction. Over 25 years have passed since the publication of my book, The Manipulated Man, a pamphlet written in a greater anger against the women movement's worldwide monopoly of opinion. The determination in which those women portrayed us as victims of men not only seemed humiliating, but also unrealistic. If someone should want to change the destiny of our sex, I wish I had then and I have today, then that someone should attempt to do so with more honesty, and possibly also with a little humor. I would like to take the opportunity presented by the reuse of my book to answer to the question which I asked again and again in this context. People often ask me if I would write this book again. Well, I find it right and proper to have done so, but seen from today's perspective, my courage in those days may only be attributed to a lack of imagination, despite all I wrote, and I could not really imagine the power I was up against. It seemed that one is only allowed to criticize women on the quiet, especially as a woman, and could only expect agreement behind closed doors. As we women have, thanks to a relatively stress-free life, a higher life expectancy than men and consequently make up the majority of voters in the Western industrial nations, no politician could afford to offend us. And the media is not interested in discussing the issues involved either. Their products are financed through the advertisement on consumer goods, and should we women decide to stop reading a certain newspaper or magazine as its editorial policy displeases us, then the advertisement targeted to us also disappear. After all, it is well established that women make the majority of the purchasing decisions. However, I have also underestimated men's fear of re-evaluating their position. Yet the more sovereignty they are losing in their professional lives, the more automatic their work, the more controlled by computer they become, the more that increasing unemployment forces them to adopt ubiquitous behavior towards customer and superiors. Then the more they have to be afraid of recognition of their predicament, and the more essential it becomes to maintain their illusion that is not only they who are slaves, but also of those who on behalf they subject themselves to such an existence. As absurd as it may sound, today's men need feminism much more than their wives do. Feminists are the least ones who still describe men the way they like themselves, as egocentric, power-obsessed, ruthless, and without inhibition when it comes to satisfying their instincts. Therefore, the most aggressive women's rebels find themselves in the strange predicament of doing more to maintain the status quo than anyone else. Without arrogant accusation, the macho man would no longer exist, except perhaps in movies. If the press style men as rebellious fools, the actual sacrificial lambs of this men's society, men themselves, would no longer flock to the factories so obediently. So, I hadn't imagined broadly enough the isolation I would find myself in after writing this book, nor had I envisaged the consequences which I would have for subsequent writing, even for my private life. Violence threats have not ceased to this date. A woman who defended the arch-enemy, who didn't equate domestic life with solitary confinement, who described the company of young children as pleasure, not a burden, necessarily had to become a misogynist, even a reactionary, and a fascist in the eyes of the public. Had Karl Marx not determined once and for all that in an industrial society it is us, the women, who are the most oppressed? It goes without saying, doesn't it, that someone who did not want to take part in the colonization of her own sex is also supposed to equal wages and equal opportunities? In other words, if I had known what I know today, I probably wouldn't have written this book, and that is precisely the reason why I am so glad to have written it. I would like to thank a handful of people who have stood up for me and my work. Typically, most of them are women. The second question I am often asked is about the topicality of the opinion I expressed then. To what extent is that described over 25 years ago still relevant to the new woman and the new man? Here is a list of issues which I recognized in the original book to the men's most significant disadvantages compared to women. 1. Men are conscripted, women are not. 2. Men are sent to fight in wars, women are not. 3. Men retire later than women, even though due to their lower life expectancy they should have the right to retire earlier. 4. Men have almost no influence over their reproduction. For males, there is neither a pill nor abortion. They can only get the children women want them to have. 5. Men support women. Women never or only temporarily support men. 6. Men work all their lives. Women work only temporarily or not at all. 7. Even though men work all their lives and women only work temporarily or not at all, on average, men are poorer than women. 8. Men only borrow their children. Women can keep them, as men work all their lives and women do not. Men are automatically robbed of their children in cases of separation, with the reasoning that they have to work. As one can see, if anything, the female position of power has only consolidated. Today. A career in the military is also open to women in many countries, but without conscription for all. Many achieved for themselves the right to practice their job for the same number of years as their male colleagues. However, the retirement age was not increased for all of us, and now, as before, it does not occur to the underprivileged to fight against this grotesque state of affairs. Only as far as the sixth point is concerned has there been a significant change. In the more entertaining spheres of work, there are more and more women who happily and willingly work and still keep their jobs despite having the children they themselves desire. But only a few of these women would be prepared to offer a life of comfort not only to their children, but also their children's fathers, supported by their often substantial salaries, and fewer would further be prepared, in case of separation, to give up their home and offspring and support the next admirer with what is left of her income. Also, men would not like it. Emancipation may be fine, but to be kept by a woman is still not acceptable. Housekeeping and raising children is not worthy for a real man. Sadly, women manipulation of the woman is as topical today in the UK as it was back then, but so are the measures which could be used to end it, to the benefit of both sexes. In the meantime, however, there are already a few feminists who are talking also about men as human beings, so the continuation of this discussion may not have to be conducted quite so loudly. Esther Vilar, August 1998. The Slave Happiness. A lemon-colored MG skids across the road, and the woman driver brings it to a somewhat uncertain halt. She gets out and finds her left front tire flat. Without wasting a moment, she prepares to fix it. She looks towards the passing car as if expecting someone. Recognizing this standard international sign of women in distress, weak female let down by male technology, a station wagon throws up. The driver sees what is wrong at a glance and says comfortingly, "Don't worry, we'll fix that in a jiffy." To prove his determination, he asks for her jack. He does not ask if she is capable of changing the tire herself, because he knows she is about 30, smartly dressed and made up, that she is not. Since she cannot find her jack, he fetches his own, together with other tools. 5 minutes later, the job is done and the punctured tire properly installed. His hands are covered with grease. She offers him an embroidered handkerchief, which he politely refuses. He has a rag for such occasions in his toolbox. The woman thanks him profusely, apologizing for her typical feminine helplessness. She might have been there till dusk, she says, had he not stopped. He makes no reply, and as he gets into the car, gallantly shuts the door for her. Through the wound-down window, he advises her to have her tire patched at once, and she promises to get her garageman to see that it is that evening. Then she drives off. As the man collects his tools and goes back to his own car, he wishes he could have washed his hands. His shoes, he has been standing in the mud while changing the tire, are not so clean as they should be. He is a salesman. What is more, he will have to hurry to keep his next appointment as he starts the engine. He thinks, women. Once more stupid than the next, He wonders what she would have done if he had not been there to help. He puts his foot on the accelerator and drives off faster than usual. There is the delay to make up. After a while, he starts to hum to himself. In a way, he is happy. Almost any man would have behaved in the same manner, and so would most women, without thinking, simply because men are men and women are so different from them, and women will make use of man whenever there is an opportunity. What else could the woman have done when her car broke down? She has been taught to get a man to help. Thanks to his knowledge, he was able to change the tire quickly and at no cost to herself. True, he ruined his clothes, put his business in jeopardy, and endangered his own life by driving too fast afterward. Had he found something else wrong with her car, however, he would have repaired that too. That is what his knowledge of cars is for. Why should a woman learn to change a flat tire when the opposite sex, half the world's population, is able and willing to do it for her? Women let men work for them, think for them, and take on their responsibility. In fact, they exploit them. Yet since men are stronger, intelligent, and imaginative, while women are weak, unimaginative, and stupid, why isn't it men who exploit women? Could it be that strength, intelligence, and imagination are not prerequisites for power but mere qualification for slavery? Could it be that the world is not being ruled by the expert but the beings who are not fit for anything else, by women? And if this is so, how do women manage it and that their victims do not feel themselves cheated and humiliated, but rather believe themselves to be what they are least of all, masters of the universe? How do women manage to instill in men this sense of pride and superiority that inspires them to ever greater achievements? Why are women never unmasked?